Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. I'm Javier, the founder of ICP Hub Canada and the US, and also partner of Quantum Leap Labs. And this is Quantum Series, talks with VCs and visionary tech leaders talking about the future of AI, blockchain, and new technologies. I'm super happy, super excited because we have one of the best guys related with branding, storytelling, and everything with marketing. And yeah, he's amazing. We have today Kenneth Echo. Hi, Kenneth.
Hello, hello. That was a beautiful intro. I'm gonna have to work on my own intro now. You have to
Thank
do
you
way
so much,
better.
sir. Yeah. Let me just introduce yourself a little bit more about your background, and then you can jump in. Kenneth Echo is the founder of Scale Story. It's a video-first personal branding business that helps founders and CEOs turn their stories into strategic assets. With over 10 years of experience in content creation, he's collaborated with founders and CEOs across multiple industries to shape narratives that drive clarity, confidence, and commercial growth. Specializing in elevating ambitious tech startups at pivotal moments, Scale Story focus on refining messaging, building founder-led brands, and generating momentum when it matters most. He has produced more than 5,000 hours of video content. His content was instrumental in the rise, for example, of Sam Jones, founder of Gener 8, contributing to more than $10 million in funding and a social following of over 260,000 new followers. This is amazing. I was reading the bio, but of course I have to mention, right? We cannot start the conversation
Ah,
without telling who is Kenneth and what you are doing, man. That is
that is
impressive.
thank you, thank you. It's interesting because I've never had all of those things bundled together. So sitting there, I was just like, it felt like a birthday party where you're like, what do I do? What do I do? So no, I appreciate you for giving me that. I think
Yeah.
it's important to say as a caveat to all of that is that it's really interesting how there's a big focus within the founder space on like these metrics and being able to say, you've raised this much money, you've done this many hours, these are all of your accolades. And I think what is most important is the beginning. What you said right at the beginning was that what it is that we do and why we do it essentially. And what we do is video first personal branding. But the why is the most important part out of everything we mentioned. Um, Quite simply, I think it comes down to the problem that all startups face, no matter if you're big or small, which is startups live or die by their ability to communicate their ideas, and the role that storytelling plays within kind of being able to help that communication and elevate that communication is key to being able to raise funds, to be able to attract staff, to be able to pitch and speak to investors with confidence. So yeah, I don't want anyone to go away thinking that all of those accolades are the reason why Scale Story exists. Scale Story exists because there is a real problem in the startup space that isn't going to get solved anytime soon if we don't give more tools, more assets, and more resources towards it.
Hmm. No, that's true. And this is something like for us is really important to know, and in general for all the founders, right? As you know, we are running Quantum Leap Labs. That is the first venture studio helping projects to build from zero to launch on the Internet Computer Protocol. And we are facing this kind of problems, right? We have some talent, but people they don't know how to sell it, right? This talent, and they don't know like how to, you know, talk in front of these uh, investors, right? And venture capitalists that they want to listen more and they want to understand more the project. But sometimes even happens that when the founders pitch their project, okay, there are some questions, but then if you dive in and you ask one-on-one to the VCs, it's like, hey, you know what this project are doing? You know specifically their activities, what they are doing. Like, no, man, Javier, I don't know. I can, there are some parts that I can imagine, okay,
Yeah,
it's a DeFi project or it's an intellectual property or it's a whatever industry, but I don't know, like how they get money, like how they attract users, what is, no, I don't understand.
yeah.
It's like, okay, and they pitch 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then you don't understand, right? Like how, like, they should
You
like
know,
explain to like a 5 years old guy, right? Can you elaborate more about this? But this is a real
yeah.
problem, right?
So I think it's like it's really interesting if you spend many years working on something, it doesn't matter what it is. You get to know that thing really, really well. It could be a car, it could be writing a book, but whatever it is, you know it so intrinsically well that we start to assume that people know it as well as we do, and we start to miss off key pieces of context. And human beings, we love context. We love knowing what things are happening around the thing we're talking about. So when it comes to being a founder, you spent 2, 3, 4 years in your own room, in your own head, thinking of an idea, trying to get it out there, iterating it over and over again, and you forget that origin. You forget the reason why you actually sat down and said, I want to make a change. So a lot of times when speaking with founders, I will say the sentence that you mentioned, like explain it to me like you would do to your 5-year-old niece or nephew. Because if you can't do that, then we've really gone too far in the wrong direction of making things very complex for ourselves, and that doesn't serve anybody else. So whatever startup that somebody has, the ability to communicate to a 5-year-old is being able to really simply say, this is what we're doing, this is who it's for, and this is the change that we want to make within a certain time frame or within some sort of mostly time frame, but basically based on what we've seen, we want to change the trajectory of things. And for a lot of people, that's the hardest question they've been asked. They are really good at defending the metrics. They're really good at defending traction, really good at explaining why they've handpicked the staff members they have, but not so strong on being able to say, this is my company, this is what it does, and this is why I'm passionate about it. If you can master those three things in the version of way that the 5-year-old can understand it, then you'll never have a problem with an investor sitting through a 10-minute pitch going, I have no idea what's happening here, because then it just generates more questions, and you don't want that. You want investors to be excited and ask questions about the future rather than what have I just watched or what have I just experienced.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm totally agree. And what is your opinion about the person or the figure of the founder, right? Because if we are talking about these pre-seed investments, right, that maybe you don't have enough user traction, you just like have an MVP, a good idea, and maybe like a demo with beta testers or some people, friends and family giving you some feedback, but you don't have like a real product, like profit, profitable and all these kind of
Yeah.
things. Like in this kind of stage, like how it's important the founder talk about himself or herself or like, okay, this is why you should invest in us. This is the team. This is our strength. Because also there is some problems that I seeing sometimes that people they don't expend a lot of time talking about themselves, right? And talking about, okay, we have 10 years, 15 years of experience doing this. We have covering this. We have 4 people in the team covering the technology, business development, marketing, right? Everything.
Yeah.
This is important, right? It's the most important thing for someone that is going to invest in your product. Okay, maybe not now, but in the future, in the next 3 years, 5 years, I think these guys are capable to, scale up massively and become like a multi-million company, right?
hmm hmm I think to your point about how founders don't like to talk about themselves, I think that's actually just a wider thing for everyone. I think naturally we don't like to just talk about ourselves. It feels like we're, at least from a British mentality, it's not really nice to say, hey, I do this and I'm the best and I'm the greatest. It feels a little bit out of sorts, a little bit weird. I think what is interesting about when you're pitching or being able to speak to others about your product and your service and your startup in general
Mhm.
is that it is important to talk about yourself and your capacities and capabilities so that someone understands that you are the right person to take things forward. But the way that I typically like to reframe it is by starting with something that is already exciting for both parties. That happens to be more commonly known as your mission and vision statement. So if we can understand the problem you're solving, the vision that you have for the future once things are solved, and your mission, then it gives you complete creative license to say, actually, I've told you all about where I'm trying to go, but you don't know who I am. And I think it's everyone can resonate with the fact that if I came to you and say, for example, I said, okay, I'm going to fix your car because you've got car problems, and you go, okay, but who are you? Is the first question that you. What's the credibility? How do I know that I can trust you? The same thing is true for all elements of business, and the same thing is true for all elements of interaction. So I think there's like a deep psychological connection with how you present yourself to people, because you don't want to leave people with questions that they find difficult to answer. You want to leave people with questions that they find like they're curious and they're intrigued to find out more about you and what your plan looks like and how you're going to tackle different adversities. So I would say, yeah, all founders should talk about themselves more often, but they should start from a place of, I have a huge vision. I have this wonderful future that I see, and I would love more people to join this idea, this concept. And as it grows from idea to MVP to an actual product that's out to market, it's still the same initial statement of this is the vision. And each iteration of it is you getting a step closer to that vision being real, backed by this is who I am, and this is why I'm the person to make sure it's going to happen, because you're passionate about it. That's why you started the business. If that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah. No, totally makes sense. And then I also realize like sometimes like people are um, like flexing a little bit or trying to have like a good impression to the VCs, right? Talking about things that maybe is not happening, but could be
Yeah.
happening in the future, right? And they're not stupids, right? Maybe they don't understand all the technologies and everything, but they know exactly when someone is telling the truth or not, and they're trying to see these capabilities from the founders, right? Like, do you think, like, for example, I read a few articles about, the deals between founders and VCs happens is like in a coffees, right? In a bars that you sitting down with your laptop and then, just talk about, hey, no, I'm so passionate. I'm building this. This is the demo. What do you think, right? And people like maybe are mythifying, the films and movies about, oh, wow, Wall Street. I have to have good impression, talk a
Yeah.
lot, and say, oh, wow, this guy's so strong. Let's invest on him. And it's not true, right? The reality is totally different. What is
Yeah.
your thoughts on that? That's true, right? Or what do you think?
It's a difficult one because I think it, everyone was going to have a different experience of what a VC is to them, by way of introduction. So it might be a warm introduction. They may have entered a competition and then kind of been put in touch with the VC. There's always different paths to get connected with people, but ultimately, people buy from people. So if you could choose in any situation to buy from someone, would your own personal preference be emails? You never see the person. You don't know what they're like in terms of humor or their kind of general vibe. You don't really know much about their intent other than what's put on their website, which by design is always going to be good. Or would you prefer to have a coffee with them and be able to kind of get a sense of who that person is and where their interests lie, and have more of a two-way conversation where you can actually ask questions and get answers? So I think the whole idea of having a coffee and being able to get funded by some of the big kind of investors in the world being a route that people go down makes sense because it's a human connection. Um, the reason why you'll see on my LinkedIn and all the stuff on Scale Story us banging on about how like it's important to get your word out there is because ultimately the ability to share your story from your perspective is what makes people lean into you as a founder and then the things that you're doing. If it's just the website and it's just a couple of posts on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever, then it's that same problem again. People don't really get a sense of who you are as a person, and they can't buy into text, they can't buy into graphics, but they can buy into somebody that has a soul, someone that has like a feeling towards something. You can see the passion in their eyes and the way they talk about things. So yeah, I think that I would never discourage anyone from find investment where you find investment. Always make sure that it's good investment is the baseline. But I would never discourage anyone from not looking at investment in different places. I would encourage them to say it is definitely going to be beneficial to get your voice out there more so that you can speak to the right investors who say, hey, I love what you're doing, and I want to talk to you as a person rather than I want to talk to info@startup.com.
Yeah, of course, interactions in person are always better. That sometimes it's difficult to do it, right? But at least we never know, right? But even start with like a call message on LinkedIn, just connect and try to, have some conversations before and build this relation. I think it's important, right? You cannot like, okay, this is my pitch, please review, let me know if you like or not. It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, maybe it's not the
There's a
best
really,
way, right? You have to build
there's a
this kind
really
of relation.
I was going to say, sorry to interrupt. There's a really interesting thing that Daniel Priestley speaks about. So Daniel Priestley is an expert on kind of, I guess, the world of marketing in general. But he also talks about personal branding and is someone that I would definitely recommend checking out all of this stuff. But he speaks about the idea that someone needs to interact with you, paraphrasing, 4 times before they can feel that they trust you. And those 4 occasions previously might have been that you meet up for a coffee 4 times, and the fourth time you say, do you know what, I'll let my guard down a little bit and I'll be a bit more honest with this person. Now, with the rise of social media and the amount that we're kind of more indoors, it is more interesting that those 4 times could be a post that you've done on LinkedIn. And then I see that I stumble across your website because it comes up in an ad. And then I see a podcast that you're on, as an example. And then I see that you have done a collaborative post on Instagram. By the time I've seen you those 4 times, I now associate you as a real person who is trustworthy and credible. So to your point about building relationships, 100%, you can build relationships with investors, but founders and investors have one thing in common that will always be true, and it's that we are very busy people. Our calendars are filled, we don't have much time, and we're constantly chasing to, get more and more time, and it's just not really happening. So if there was a way that you could have those 4 interactions without needing to book in 4 meetings, which is ridiculously hard to do with anyone, then the question that I ask is, if you had the opportunity to have those 4 interactions without ever needing to leave your house or join meetings, would you do it? And I think that's where we can leverage a lot of what is happening in the world to our favor and our benefit by being able to say, okay, if your company's had a milestone, definitely share it on LinkedIn. If your company is looking to do some strategic partnerships, put it out on Instagram, put it out on the social platform that makes sense. But it's just another interaction that someone can say, you're still here, you're still alive, doing what you're supposed to be doing, and actually you've come with something that hopefully has taught me more, has helped me understand more about what you're trying to achieve as a vision and a mission.
That's great. Yeah. No, I'm totally agree with that. And then I remember, yeah, you jump in a demo day with us and talk more with our projects in Quantum Leap Labs. You made a really good presentation, and I
Thank
remember
you.
one slide. You compare like good pitch and bad pitch, or like
Mm.
some really good pitches compared with other ones that are more like average. Uh, I have a question. In your opinion, what is the I know each VC works differently, and even when I ask for like demo days, one VC, oh, I love this project, and then I ask for another VC, no, they are so arrogant, I don't like it, I prefer the other one. Each person is different, of course, but from your opinion, what is the perfect pitch that, you know, have to, like go or guide or put everything. And then if you can give us a few examples, like maybe from Shark Tank or maybe for other platforms that, your perfect pitch that people can maybe check in
Mm.
and try to imitate or at least approach in the similar
Yeah.
way, right?
So I think I would start off by saying there is no perfect pitch. I think that's a goal that we all should not chase after, because it leaves you in this space thinking that if you can copy what somebody else has done word for word, it will work for you. But even to your point, if one VC on the left says it's great and the other VC on the right says actually I didn't like it at all, then we understand that different people have different interests. So I
Hmm.
think the it wouldn't be the perfect pitch, but it would be the perfect framework. Would be going in, asking yourself how can I contextualize what I'm saying and what I'm trying to do within this pitch in a way that evokes interest at the very beginning, How can I make it very clear that I'm the right person and I have the right team to be able to do that? How am I showing what the future looks like? Because your whole pitch deck, if we're being very honest with ourselves, it really should showcase that there is a problem, there is a potential to a solution, and once that solution is put in place, it's going to be an amazing future. And the rest of the pitch deck is basically explaining we are the people for that future. If it's boiled down, that's as simple as it is. So I think if you're able to kind of use that as a very loose framework to what a pitch deck should look like, you're already starting off better than most people who are currently pitching. I think second to that point, I think it's really important to recognize that you're going to be speaking to people with different levels of interest and different levels of understanding. It's not to say that people aren't intelligent, it is to say that they may not be as interested in your world as you are. So make it really easy for them to understand what you're trying to achieve, and make it really easy by drawing on parallels or drawing on anything that's comparable that is kind of within a standardized world. If you've got a complex product, see how well you can relate it to something that happens every single day. And that makes it a lot easier for someone to digest, because then they can see that it's understood, it feels a bit more like their own, and then they'll be more invested into asking more questions. But never go into a pitch assuming that you are the best in the room, and because you've kind of refined this pitch deck that you're going to get everyone's attention. The reality is that you might get some attention from some people in that moment. You might not get any attention in that moment, and it might come by sort of 2 to 3 months later. Your only job is to communicate that there is a future that is going to be amazing, and we believe that we are the leaders in that space. We are pioneering a future, and we would love for you to back us to be part of that journey, and to help us all win.
Mhm. Yeah. And then I also want to like, because this is a really interesting topic. And of course, more or less what is the most common mistakes from these founders and entrepreneurs. I just want to bring one on the table that I saw
Yeah,
like in the previous pitch day. It was like someone that just was talking like all the time in the same tone of voice, like something, he was talking about some technicalities and something that no one cares. And I saw the faces of all the VCs, like after three
yeah,
minutes, like they disconnect totally. They
yeah,
start to see the phones or whatever. It's like they are not really passionate, and it's impossible to invest in a project that you are not focused 100% in your and put your energy to listen, right? But
yeah,
if on the other side the founder is not putting all the effort to from the beginning, right? Be energetic, be like have a good tone of voice, be charismatic as well. It's all of these things are important, right? If you think, okay, this is a presentation, I'm in a university, and then I have to talk with my students and my professors, and then it's like all the time people are okay, yeah, that's fine, next one, right? But it's not the case. Even I hear some founders, please next slide. Oh, I think there are only a few more slides, like 2 or 3 more. That's it.
yeah.
Like, man, what is this? Your project, right? You
It's,
should be like the more excited
it's,
guy in the room, right?
it's hard because I think a lot of people assume that a good pitch or a great pitch is about being extroverted and totally charismatic. And it's sometimes true, but it's not always. I think confidence is actually what really kind of carries people forward. It doesn't matter if you're unsure if the next slide is going to be the one that you want or it's not, but you don't have to let anyone else know that. You can confidently go to the next slide, know in your head that you were wrong, and then say, so now we have this slide, and just continue as normal. And that confidence you don't need to be extroverted to have that confidence. You don't need to be someone that shouts or wildly charismatic. You just need to know that if things go wrong, the only person in the room that has all of the answers is you, because you created the company. You're the person that's been up for hours and hours and hours, probably till 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, thinking of ways that you can make things better. And that is the testament of that is, 2, 3, 4 years of all of that research. It's in your head. It's there. You just have to pull on it. So I think to your earlier point, which I just realized I didn't answer the question, it is good to reference other people. Like you mentioned, Shark Tank, Dragon's Den in the UK. There's like almost a standardized format of how people pitch. You'll see sort of 2 or 3 typically speaking, 2 or 3 openers that people have. And it's just good to go and watch them and make notes. You don't need to be well versed in storytelling to know what's a good story or what's a bad story. Just write down the things that you like. And after watching 4 or 5 pictures, you'll start to see that there are things that are really common, things that appear over and over again. Take note of those and see how you can extract that and use it for your own pictures. Combine that with the confidence. It doesn't really matter if slides will break. Technology always goes wrong, especially when there's high stakes. The pointer won't point. The going to the next slide won't work. It's always headache. And this is coming from some of the people that have at their highest level operating very, very high level are going to these huge stages, and they're being told like this is a real life example of a company that. I won't mention the space or the company that it happened with, but the slides that were being presented were the test slides, and the slides that they had sent to say, here are my final slides, never arrived. So in the moment, the founder basically was doing the pitch and had to say, the slides aren't correct, but owned it and said, but this is part of life. It doesn't mean that we're not going to continue on our mission or vision. It just means that you might not get some of the visual references, and went on to the next slide as if nothing had happened. And that again speaks to the founder and their resilience in that moment of adversity has come, I've moved forward. That is speaking more to you as a person, that whole how do you create a good image of yourself in someone else's eyes? How do you create a personal brand that someone says, hey, Javier's really, really cool and really confident and he's rock solid? It doesn't start from writing cool posts on LinkedIn to say, today I saved the cat from a tree. It starts from someone basically saying, I want to present all of the goodness that I want to do in the world and confidently put it out there. And the vehicle that I'm using is my company. Like, my company is what I want to do and how I want to impact the world. And every single day, I'm going to go out there with the same energy I have same energy that I have every single night, where I'm up trying to figure out with ChatGPT, how do I do this thing? How do I do this thing?
Yeah. And how about the Q&As? Q&As is also like a important moment for the pitch. And I see sometimes really good presentations, right? But people, they are not super prepared. The questions like, okay, it is right. As a founder, you have to like at least have 50, 100 questions and have in your mind, the replies, right? The answers, right? Uh, I see this, right? Perfect pitches, 5 minutes, and then Q&A, total disaster, right?
Yeah.
There are there are like the common questions that okay, what is the user traction, how you're going to be profitable, right? Who is the team? Tell us more about the team. These kind of questions that all the VCs are always asking, but there are also some specific questions, right? That could be like
Yeah.
more about the competence, or like this is a problem, a legal problem, how you're going to facing it now, these kind of regulations here and there. I don't know. There are a lot of different questions that this is the moment that, a VC now, that if a project is really sharp and really good,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
scale up or not, right?
I think that, especially coming from the personal branding sort of background, I think a lot of people are afraid to look silly. They're afraid to look stupid. And because they're afraid to look stupid, they will find an excuse to not say things. So on one hand, you've got people saying, okay, I don't want to start a personal brand because I don't want people to look back at what I made 3-4 years ago and tell me that I was wrong. So I'd rather not do anything. And the same thing is true for when you're doing the Q&A within pitches, because we're scared of messing up and looking bad. So we just kind of waffle and fumble around. The truth of the matter is, ownership and accountability are always going to take you forward. If you said something silly 3 years ago, you said something silly 3 years ago. And if you don't have the answer to something, you do not have the answer. There is nothing wrong in explaining that. The difficulty is in leaving it there by saying, I don't know anything that. The accountability. What you can do is, one, defer if you don't know, and you can't give that answer there in that moment. Then be honest about it and say, okay, well, in this moment, the information I have, talk about the information that you do have about it, everything you know about it, and say, these are the metrics that I have off the top of my head, but I'd be more than happy to go and look into that deeper and we can have a conversation about it after, because I don't want to waste time, because it's valuable time for the two of you. I don't want to waste time trying to give you an answer that doesn't make sense for you. And we see, and human beings in general, we value the transparency of saying, okay, actually, I don't know, but I'll go and check. Or the person that does know, who, if it's a technical question, might be the CTO. And you can say, broadly speaking, this is what I know. And if that isn't the answer that kind of really explains everything quite clearly, then I'm more than happy to jump on a call with the CTO and talk about it a bit more in depth. And that leaves both parties in a place where we understand that there is knowledge, we understand that there is understanding of that area, but more importantly, we understand that there is some sort of next step. That's the accountability that you have to carry through, owning that you don't know, and then owning the fact that there is going to be some sort of resolution provided in the short term.
Hmm. Yeah. And then also the money that they raise, right? I see like sometimes, in different pitches, they finish the pitch and then okay, finish the Q&A. That's fine, but what is the point? What is the goal of have these demo days? At the end of the day, it's like, okay, I want to present an idea, a product, something, and I want to raise some funds, right? But even I see some slides or some pitches that they don't ask about, okay, I need $500,000, I need $2 million, and this is the allocation, how I'm going to use this money, right? Um, People, you think they feel afraid to ask for money in general? Is something like they don't feel comfortable, right? Hey, I need $500,000 for do this, right? And I see a
I'm
lot
with
of
you.
founders, right? Or not?
It depends on the level. I think one of my favorite quotes is about how being in the startup world is a full contact sport. It's much like rugby or American football, where anything can happen every single time. If you first start playing the sport, the first time you get hit, it's a shock and it's confusing. And then as you progress and become more experienced, you learn to dodge, you learn to weave, you learn to not get hit as hard because it is not fun getting yourself picked back up. So I think the idea of founders not asking and not having an ask after a 5 or 10 minute pitch is that first fumble. It's very much early stage that people won't have an ask. People will see the value of it and typically find the value of it quite quickly when they realize that they're not getting a response to a question they haven't asked. So no one's going to invest in your company if they don't know what they're investing in, but the what also includes the amount and how that is allocated. The ask slide, I think typically within the pitch deck is I would say it's the easiest to speak about because you spent the last basically 4.5 minutes talking about everything else. You
Hmm.
typically spend 30, 45 seconds saying our ask is X amount of million or thousand, depending on where you are,
Hmm.
in exchange for whether it be equity or whatever other kind of path that you want to go down, which is a whole other topic for another day.
Yeah.
But I think that it's not a thing that is like widespread within the startup community by way of people not having asked, because otherwise we're just pitching for no reason. I think it's more so just that kind of early stage mistake. And I think, generally speaking, people should, like I said earlier on, look at others and see what they're doing and see what they're doing well. LinkedIn is it can be a place of two wonderful and one part wonderful and one part horrible. The horrible part is you always see people talking about their achievements and I raised this much money and our team has grown to 45 and we just did an offsite retreat in Cancun, which is not great to see if you're, co-working space, you're barely able to afford this month's rent and you're seeing someone saying we're taking 200 people to Cancun. But the beauty of it is that people also share the kind of trials and tribulations that they've gone through. So they'll talk about how they raised 5 million after doing 40 pitches and 39 of them failing. And that's a good reminder of how human this whole process is, that you're not going to know everything at the beginning. Learn from others, use everything that you have around you and surround what is your digital world with people that are going to speak into what your future looks like. you're sharing a story as you pitch. People are sharing stories online. We love sharing stories in all sorts of spaces. So knowing that to be true, find the stories that are going to help push you forward, and they will then teach you the mistakes someone else has made, so you can just dodge, weave, not have to fall over so many times.
Hmm.
Is the hope at the very least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is really cool that you also mentioned these LinkedIn and socials as well, right? Because if everyone loves to like listen as well stories related with difficulties or some things that happens in founders that they feel as well in some way identified, right? And maybe I don't want to have the same mistake, uh, and sometimes we are feel like shy to share this kind of stories, right? Or some problems that we have in the past related to scale our business, or some failures, right? Okay, I pitched 100 times and I rejected 100 times, right? And then I changed some parts, some things, and then I have now a lot of VCs interested on me, right? These kind of things, if we don't tell the story to the world, it's very difficult to also get the attention and the traction. And I think we should like talk more, and always, maybe there are some people that they don't want to consume your content or they are not interested, but for sure there will be like other people that are really well connected with you, and have the same troubles or the same mistakes or the same questions, right? And thanks to these kind of stories or videos, you can also solve these kind of problems. And I'm totally agree. This is true.
Yeah, you
And
never really know who's watching or who's listening. So whenever it is that you're sharing a story, not really kind of looking at, is this the right story, is this the wrong story? Whatever it is that you share, you have no idea how far it's going to reach. If I were to share a story today and you, Javier, happen to like it, the whole of the Quantum Leap Labs has exposure to that one liked post. But I don't know that because I don't know absolutely every single person who's connected to you. But also, your ex-colleague from 10 years ago in Madrid also has visibility of that post. So because of that, we will often say, I don't want to share this story because I'm scared that it will come back to bite me in the ass. It's going to come back and like it's going to make me look bad and all this kind of stuff. But the opposite is also true, that you might post something and 5, 6 days later, someone comes back to you and says, hey, I saw that you posted about this. I'd love to help. I'd love to get involved. I'd love to connect you with somebody that can, help you solve this mystery. It's not about going on and having a pity party and saying, "Oh, life is hard, and today we had to get rid of 4 of our staff, and I'm really, really having a difficult time," and take a selfie of you, crying in
yeah.
your £1 million office. It's not that at all, but more
Mhm.
so speaks to this idea, this wave of building in public, showing the ups and showing the downs, because ultimately people want to kind of get an idea of what's happening behind the scenes. If I don't
Yeah.
work at a company, I can't see how things are built. If Apple, Samsung, whoever, any of these big companies are to build something, it's a secret until the last moment, and then it's released and it's done. Startups have a great opportunity to be able to say, hey, we're working on something and it's really cool. And in fact, we'd love some people to test it. So building in public, we'd love to share the story of this is what we're building, this is what we're trying to achieve. And in the mid-term or short term, we need 50 people to come and be user testers. And you never know who those 50 people are. They might introduce you to your next investor. They might introduce you to another bigger community that will, help the user growth as a natural organic thing. So every post is an opportunity for a door to be opened, as long as you're putting the heart into it. That is, I'm trying to share the story with the intent of more good things coming back. And we can talk about frameworks and how to avoid that, being something that's a negative repercussion. But that's kind of the way that we see it at the very least.
Hmm. Yeah. And then for these socials or branding, I also see some companies, right, with like thousands of followers, and then the founders of these companies with millions of followers, right? I want to discuss with you about, okay, what is the importance of like, okay, branding, a logo, of course, identity, and people feel, I love this brand for any reasons, but we are people, right? We are humans. We want to see humans. Logos or companies, that's fine, right? But we trust in humans, right? What is the your opinion on that? Like why these kind of companies, behind these companies, the founders or the leaders have like 10x or 100x more followers and more traction compared with companies?
Mm. I think there's an interesting ceiling when it comes to how we look at things on socials in general. So the first ceiling is what a business has, and the other ceiling is what an individual has, right? A personal brand has. You will
Hmm.
typically find that if you take any company, pretty much any company, the ceiling is quite high that they've, hit, I don't know, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers. And if their founder is active, and this is the key word is active on socials, two things will happen. One, they'll have a bigger following than the brand themselves. But the second thing is that their rate of growth is exponentially faster than the business itself. And the biggest thing behind that, what I believe, is that the psychology is that a brand is a thing. It is an object, and it could be here today, but it could go tomorrow. And therefore, you only invest in it once you believe that you trust it. And we're not, outwardly speaking, quite trustful just off the bat. It takes a while to build up that trust. So I like to play this game where you look around the house, you look at the different brands that you have. So this is a really easy example. This is my favorite camera. It's a little Fuji Insta camera.
Hmm.
Um, and my question would be, what do you know about this brand? Do you trust them? And what is your reason for trusting them, right? And people would say, well, actually, yeah, I had a Fuji camera when I was a kid, and I really loved them, and I love Polaroid cameras, so I also loved them. So yeah, I love that brand. That's awesome, and that's great. And some people say, I have no idea what that is, not interested in it at all, and there's that split. When you go to a person, it is really hard to get that split right down the middle. It's very blurry. So you take someone like Stephen Bartlett, for example, where he's got Diary of a CEO, and you'll have people who follow him because he promotes health and being active. He also promotes a kind of mental health and wellness. He also promotes, obviously, Diary of a CEO and deep conversations. He's a storyteller. So when you say to a person, okay, what do you think of Diary of a CEO as a brand, as a business? They'll say categorically, I like 4 out of 10 episodes, and I watch those 4 and I ignore the other 6. And then you ask them, okay, what else? And they'll say, I love this conversation and that conversation. Awesome. So it's quite binary. What do you love about Stephen Bartlett? Well, actually, they could come along and say, I don't watch any of Diary of a CEO, but I love the vlogs that he does when he's running. I love the behind the scenes that he does of his company. And I've had this like literal comment happens over and over again, which is, I don't really follow what the company does. I'm not really sure about what it is that they're trying to achieve on a larger scale. But I do love how they show me what's happening in the day to day. I do love how they're showing me what's happening with the staff. And then when you ask some more questions, they've casually learnt more about the company than an investor would within a pitch, because they've just been watching the company grow, and they're, seeing sneak peeks of all hands and behind the scenes. So I think founders can grow a lot faster. Very long answer, I apologize. Founders can grow a lot faster than brands and businesses, because they blur the lines of trust in a positive way. They blur the lines of what they can talk about. They originally start off talking about one subject, and then you can kind of grow to talk about whatever you want at a certain level. When I say whatever you want, within the roots of what you began with. And it's just interesting. It's interesting to see a person grow and share their life and tell those stories. Companies can't tell stories as well. They lean on human beings to be able to tell stories.
Hmm. Yeah, this is really important. Like how, you can build more credibility, to your brand through the owner, right? Through the person that is behind the scenes. And I think this is a really cool, interesting topic. And this is also like why you are here, and also, your company. Some people from the audience, I assume they have more and more questions about what you are doing exactly, like how Scale Story is helping founders and businesses to scale up and be better in terms of branding, in terms of recognition. What is your exactly, your company is doing, and your daily activities, right? Like when you
Mm.
for example, have the first conversation with a founder, like how you detect maybe these weaknesses or how, what is your approach in general to help a founder, right? The
Yeah.
processes or the stages.
So I'll probably take the question in two parts because I think it's important to give a bit of context of why the company even came to fruition to then get to what's happening today. So I'm going to briefly explain probably about 10 years in about 2 minutes. Let's see if we can do that as a storytelling challenge for myself.
Cool.
But I think the important part is that like I come from a background of videography, working as a freelance videographer for business owners back in 2015. I think is when things started for me. And the idea behind it very much was that I would film products and services and kind of boost people's sales by 2, 3, 4%, whatever it was. Very egotistical way of doing business because you walk up to a business and say, I'm going to make you more money, pay me money, and that's the exchange that we're going to have. In that transactional market that I created for myself, I basically became a freelancer that would come in, film something, send it off, and then go find another client. And after many years of doing that, what I realized were a couple of things. Number one, it's really, really boring to film just products and services because there is no story. Speaking to the whole, what is a brand? What does that look like? There were no stories to tell outside of, this product helps this product helps this. And out of what could have been maybe boredom, when I was on these shoots, I would start to ask the business owners and founders and CEOs, "Hey, why did you start this thing? Like, what made you wake up one day and say I'm going to start a business? Because it's not easy to do."
Hmm.
And when having these conversations, I slowly started to realize that actually it's way more interesting to hear why they started the business, and actually we should probably film this. So I started to film it, and then we would show the product or the service at the beginning, and then show a bit of the founder story at the end, which doesn't make any sense because why would you see the product first and then hear why it exists at the end? So then flipped it, and then it became the founder story and then the product at the end, which worked better. And there was kind of like a raise in sales, and the contracts got bigger, and it was a lot more kind of a bit more of a two-way conversation rather than just transactional. Over time, that then became the founder story was the only thing that was there, and the product or service just got dropped because there was way more traction on building in public. There was way more traction in being able to share what it is that you're trying to achieve and the people who you were trying to achieve it for. Because actually, nobody knows what you're doing besides you unless you say it. And there's only so many posts you can do on social media that are written or images to say, "Hey, we're helping this group of people." Well, how? And what does that look like today? What does that look like on a weekly basis? What does that look like on a monthly basis? Founder-led storytelling kind of opens you up to doing that. So off the back of doing that for many years and growing a small team to be able to kind of meet the needs of different business owners and different founders and CEOs, got into the startup world and realized that there was a huge problem with the storytelling element because I watched startups essentially die because they weren't able to communicate a problem. And the problem that they were solving essentially was the problem they needed to communicate. So it became more relevant to talk about founder-led storytelling in that moment than it ever had previously. And I'd kind of done this 180 going from this is transactional work to really, really want to help get your founder story out to the world so people understand the impact that you're trying to have and they can join along. Fast forwarding to today, Scale Story essentially was born out of what seems to be some sort of crazy wild journey of things are working better this way. Maybe we should put a wrapping around it because it's a thing now and people are asking for it. So the problem that is solved essentially is, or the problem that we're trying to solve, I should say, is essentially being able to empower founders and CEOs to become better storytellers. What does that look like on a daily basis is a fun one. There are basically two core pillars of the company, one being commercial and the other being what we internally like to say social impact. On the commercial side, which is really quite straightforward, it is everything to do with being able to build your personal brand, being able to amplify the story that you already have, not making up things to say, hey, you've achieved this, you haven't. No, let's talk about what you have and amplify it. Attached to a goal or multiple goals. We look at where you are today and where you're trying to get to in a year's time. It could be funding that you're trying to raise. It could be being able to attract more staff. It could be being able to get more consumers. But regardless what the goal is, kind of agnostic about that, it is trying to bridge the gap between where you are today and where you're trying to get to in the future. And if we can bridge that gap and bring things a little bit closer, a little bit faster through content, then that is a win. And if we can't, we'll happily put our hands up and say, look, content is not going to solve this problem. Maybe you should speak to these people, maybe speak to those people. So it is sitting down with founders on a monthly basis, batch recording content and getting them to be able to share their story on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, depending on the cadence that they require and their ambition, so on and so forth. What's cool about that is that we get to tell stories that people typically don't think are important because they know it for themselves. We're an external force, so we're able to come in with fresh eyes and say, hey, what you're doing is awesome. We just need to package it so that the world can understand it in a better way. The other thing is we get to lean on all of the experience from other startups that we're working with. So if there are things that are trending within the startup space, or just generally speaking within the kind of socials, then we'll tap into that. That doesn't mean doing TikTok dances or trending audio. More so if we're looking at how people build in public, and there's a lot of talk about how AI is on the rise and what that looks like for companies. Maybe we tap into some of the things that you're doing and what's happening with AI as an example of what is kind of globally trending. So that's one pillar. And then the second pillar would be the social impact. We have an internal mission to provide as much free resource as possible without gatekeeping. The idea that someone has to pay to understand how to better improve their startup through storytelling doesn't always need to be something that someone sits down and pays hundreds or thousands of pounds to say, hey, we have access to your knowledge now because we paid the money and now we're going to be better. Actually, there's lots of stuff that you can do before you even get to us. And if we can provide that resource and it helps you and it elevates you, then the hope is that in the future, if you do need help, you would come to us. And if you don't, also okay, because if the startup ecosystem is better because of those free resources, then it makes things easier, funding becomes a lot smoother, and the whole ecosystem rises. So ultimately, provide the free resource so that everyone else can benefit. And it's a great opportunity for us to learn. We're not the best in the game, never claim to be. But what is really interesting is going at this with a really humble proposition of put the content out there, take all the feedback from the people that are watching it, which has been awesome so far. I started in January. And that has kind of informed every single piece of content we put out, because we can't preach about the importance of storytelling without, one, telling stories, and number two, it is very important to know your audience. It's very important to take feedback from them and build that sort of mini community online. So if we want to practice what we preach, then the two pillars of the business, the social impact part is the most important part, because the commercial part, if you boil it down, it's just signatures. Someone has signed to say, hey, I'm committed to doing this thing with you guys. And we say, awesome, let's take it all the way there. And that's kind of what it looks like. And then if that's answered your question completely. I'm not sure if it's answered it completely.
Yeah, no, you answered completely. I think so. Yeah. You answered really well. Yeah, I was like listening, super interested about this because also I think people today are learning a lot about you, Ken. Uh, my question is like one guy as you, like you have, I think 5,000 hours of video content, right? Produced more than 5,000 hours. It's easy to say, but it's not easy to achieve. 5,000 hours of video content is really huge. What is your advice, like people like me as well, right? That yeah, we are starting to create some video content, or we want to tell more stories. In my case, for example, I want to expose more busy world, tech savvies and people from the industry that can, bring some value to the communities in general. What is your advice or your tips like that you can bring to these new people that maybe they want to do more video content, but they are hesitating or
Yeah. If I had to pick one piece of advice for when it comes to starting a personal brand, I would say it's really, really, really important to actually look to the future and look at what impact you want to have. I think a lot of people get bogged down with, okay, I'm speaking at an event next week, let me post about the event, and then after that, we've got team day, and I'm going to post about that, and now my personal brand is out there. And you will very quickly realize that you've run out of things to say because everything is event-based. Other people will write tons and tons of novels about all of the business advice that they have, and that is also quite laborious because you very quickly run out of content. If you do it future-facing, very different scenario. So if we take an imaginary example of a founder who has got a business and they're looking to change the world of pet food, as a random example. What is the future impact they want to have? Based on them as an individual in tandem with their company, they want to change the education around pet food and how it can be healthier, the process can be more sustainable, and so on and so forth. When we start looking at those things as the future of that person, what becomes interesting is we can then start to pull on what can we talk about. So we can talk about pet food being sustainable, past, present, and future. We can talk about why this person actually loves pets and why they enjoy talking about pets. So start to talk about why they've created a company. What is the origin story behind that company? But very quickly you start to build like these themes. The idea is that these themes will then become pillars, and you could say, right, pillar number 1, sustainability. Pillar number 2 is how we're doing things. Pillar number 3 is the challenges that we've had along the way. And then you kind of never run out of content because you're basing it on a future that is yet to exist but is in process. And along the way, when events come up, they just kind of slot in really nicely in between these pillars or join one of the pillars. But you don't run out because you've got so many things to pull from. Because you're working towards a future where you're impacting others, what you will lead with is heart and value. You will try at your best to help people understand the world from your perspective, but knowing that you're trying to do it as a service for others, to say, hey, here are the things that I've learned, here are the things that I know, or here are the things that I'm trying. An important place to start. I think I should also caveat that by saying, whenever we onboard a client, the first thing we tell them is the camera is the last thing that you're going to see. We probably won't touch a camera for the first 2 weeks of being onboarded, which is strange being a company that specializes in video first personal branding and it's video last. But the main reason is that we will sit down and figure out what does that future look like for you. And then we'll figure out those pillars, and then we'll start to figure out what does that look like by way of a prototype. Can we do a really rough version of that for you? And by that, we want you to be self-sufficient and be able to do these things yourself. So can you talk about this topic freely for a minute, whatever it is from one of those pillars? Awesome, let's give it a go. Take out your phone and record a 1-minute video of that. How does that feel? So on and so forth. A lot of psychology goes into that kind of first month. But by the end of that first month, you go to sit in front of a camera, you're not worried about script, you're not worried about intonation, you're not worried about body language. What you're really worried about is, how soon will I get this out onto the internet? Because you spend all of that time figuring out what is your why. Why am I doing the storytelling? Why audience? Why are people going to care? We figured all of that out beforehand. If you do that work at the beginning, it will save you a lifetime because you don't have to revisit it. You only revisit it to remind yourself of what you're trying to achieve. But month 2, you sit in front of the camera, it's easier. Month 3, it's even easier. And it's the consistency and the repetition that makes it easier and easier and easier because you know where you're headed to. Don't start with, hey, I'm Javier, I've got this business and I want to talk about it. That's your pitch. That's it. We've got 5-minute pitch down, but there's not much more to talk about. So yeah, I would speak to the future. And that's our kind of like, again, no gatekeeping. That's our magic tool for never running out of content. Have the pillars that speak to the future you, not to the current you. It's a wild ride. The outsized returns that you get from that are really, really great. I mean, even you and I meeting, I'd said earlier on this year, I would really be interested in doing some more talks at some point in the year. And then we fast forward to, I guess, May, April time. And we're here doing these podcasts, and it comes off the back of you just consistently being out there and showing up for others outside of yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Amazing insights, Kenneth. People don't know, but you are like a Madrileño. You can talk as well in Spanish really good. You were living in Madrid for a long time, and
Yeah.
not now, but we talk in Spanish before. But you are like you have a Madrileño accent, and this is really cool, man. Right?
This is it's funny that you say that because I mean it's a huge compliment coming from someone who's actually from Madrid. It's not like a generic compliment. But like
Yeah.
a lot of the kind of beginning opening story for me being a videographer started in 2015 when I moved to Spain, and I was like, actually, yeah, I wanna do some more of this filming stuff. I want to find out, and that's where a lot of the ego came. It was like, oh, this guy's come over from London, and he knows more about the trends than we do, so he's going to be the guy to do the things. Horribly, horribly, horribly wrong and horrible way of doing things. But I spent a lot of time in Madrid, really trying to learn as much as I could about culture and the way of life and basically kind of trying to assimilate as much as possible.
Hmm.
The benefits of it are that you end up drinking quite a lot. You end up drinking quite a lot because it's a very social something. Not necessarily getting drunk, but just socializing that way. Living 300 days in the sun, which I definitely miss in this UK.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's a really, really fundamental part of my personal journey because actually, what's really cool about Madrid is it was like a sandbox of trying out new things and testing new things. Um, and because I was already kind of on the back foot of one, I'm not from here. Number two, I speak the language, but not as well as a native person. Like I'm trying my best along the 2015 version of my Spanish versus now version of my Spanish is two very different people. Um, yeah, I really, really had to push to be able to say, hey, look, I don't know the word for lens in Spanish, and I had to go learn that and was like, okay, write it down, see if you can remember it, and then go and talk to people about lenses for whatever reason. But that kind of built up a big resilience in terms of like learning to tell a story in another language and then having to be able to then obviously in your head translate it back made me realize actually the importance of it because the the best business that I've ever done in my life has always been through being able to understand someone else's story and see how my story would potentially entwine with theirs. And if you have the handicap of, still learning the language, then you've got to learn pretty fast. So, yeah, I believe the accent came from really, really that huge desire of being able to say, listen, I need to communicate in a way that you understand better than anyone, because if not, I don't know if I'm going to get this business.
Yeah. But how cool is this, right? Like, go outside your comfort zone, start, a new life, new language, new culture. These kind of challenges, not only physically, also like mentally, like how your brain is like opening and expand, and in general your thoughts about life, right? To be honest, I thought like in the beginning, I live in Madrid for almost 33 years. I thought like, oh, this is the center of the world, right? This is that everything is happening, surround Madrid, and Madrid is. And then when you go outside and you explore other countries, other cities, not just like to do some tourism a couple of days. No, no, I mean like live there, engaging, stay with the population, stay with the people, do networking there. You realize like, man, no one is talking here about Madrid. They don't care, right? And then they say, oh, maybe the center of the world is this place, and then the other, and then you realize it like, man, world is world, and it's like, the more you travel, the more you like be outside, and maybe in the beginning try to struggle against your thoughts, your culture. In some point, you realize like, okay, let's go with the flow, and let's learn about all of these experiences, right?
I think yeah, it's funny as you're saying that. I was thinking about all of the times that I one had the same assumption of like you go to a place and you're like, oh, this is where everything happens, and then you're there for like living and holidaying are two different things. I totally agree, but like you quickly learn how those assumptions are not true. I remember the first time that I walked from the south of what is the center of Madrid, so basically from Usera all the way up to Rubén Dario, which was, I think, about an hour and a half, I think I walked.
Mhm.
When I looked on the map, I had crossed the whole underground, the whole of the metro, and I was like, you cannot do this in London. You can, but it's not going to be fun to do that. And I was like,
Yeah.
this place is so small. This is like, and the way people talk about it here, or in Madrid at the time, sorry, they're like, oh, it's this huge place. But I think what it reminded me of was one, going into a new space and having to learn like what are the boundaries, what are the rules of this game, how does it work? That's one thing you learn really quickly. But the other thing that you learn is, yeah, exactly. You're talking about these opportunities that are outside of yourself and outside of your awareness. I think it is very similar to the world of business where if you're a founder, you have a startup, it is very much like you're in your head a lot of the time, and you don't really have many people to talk about who are other founders unless you go to these different spaces and share these stories. So I think the same thing with traveling. I think it's really important to kind of make sure that you go out and experience different things because it helps inform how you do things in ways that you'll never understand in the moment. But later on, it's incredible. Madrid basically taught me how to, I mean, controversial or not, Madrid taught me how to and how not to run a business. When, and Javier, you'll know this better than anyone, but when, so you have the equivalent of HMRC, Agencia Tributaria, every single month asking for 300 euros just for existing as a freelancer, you will make sure that your invoices are paid because if not, you cannot afford to do another month. So every single month they charge you to be a freelancer and you will make sure that everything is where it needs to be. So then coming back to the UK where it's a completely different system, you say to yourself, right, the pressure from before has taught me that this is how we do things. It's very, very
Yeah.
different, very, very different approach to things. And I think it's eye-opening. So definitely, yeah, I think it's great to explore more worlds, be it physical travel, be it other founder spaces, but like get out of your own space and your own head. Saying the man who sat in his house and should probably go outside at some point.
Totally, yeah, yeah. And then this is maybe for another conversation, but yeah, Spain maybe is not the best path or the easiest path for entrepreneurs. Of course not. This is something like I think my country have to fix it if they want to at least compare and be competent with other countries. But this is for another topic,
One thing
another talk.
I will say to that is that it is extremely difficult for any human being, for anybody on this planet, to be told something is true and then to be the only person that believes that it's not. And I think one thing that was really great about Spain was there's this threshold of like you can only earn 1,500 euros a month because that's what everyone earns unless they're an absolute specialist in what they do. Saying,
Mhm.
okay, but what if I want more? It becomes this kind of fight for you saying, one of us has to be right, and how do I prove this is going to be true? So I think one thing that was really great about Spain is that you do have people that kind of subscribe to the system as it is, but then you get these outliers who, I mean, by all rights, are basically startup founders in this day and age who would say, I don't believe in the system, I'm going to do what I want, I'm going to create a future for me, and I don't need anyone else's backing other than those that believe in the future. So yeah, if I were to describe Spain, it just basically felt like the startup world before seeing the startup world. So when I finally
Mhm.
got to the startup world after kind of coming back from Spain, I was like, this makes a lot of sense for many reasons that I can't express. So yeah, there's positives, there's definitely positives.
Mhm. And Kenneth, just the last question, like how people can reach out to you. I know you're really active on LinkedIn, but if any business startup founder, like feel like, okay, this is so interesting for me and I want to know more about Kenneth, like how Kenneth can help my business, right? My branding to be more recognized in the industry in general. What is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah. So yeah, as you said, active on LinkedIn. I know it's not everyone's it's a cup of tea, but definitely the website's going to be the easiest way to kind of get all pieces of contact. So it's www.scale-story.com, and there you have links to email, to LinkedIn, to the social platforms. But yeah, we're not a huge team, and we don't have millions of messages, which is great. So any of the mediums that you do get in touch, someone will get back to you. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the easiest one to get in contact with me directly. The website, you'll have links to the team in general. But again, it's a small team, so I will see or hear about most things that come through anyway. So you'll find your way to me directly or indirectly. But if you want direct, LinkedIn definitely.
Yeah,
And then I
perfect.
guess the other thing I'd say to that is, yeah, if people want to learn more, um, definitely check out the Scale Story YouTube channel. That's where all of the free nuggets are being put. Like I said earlier on, if personal branding is something you're curious about and you want to learn more, there's definitely a guy there talking a lot about personal branding, having a lot of fun with it. And yeah, I think it's a great starting point anyway, just to get a flavor for things and see what you can do from some of the topics that we talked about today.
Awesome, yeah. There are some people, some VCs that they invest in projects, right? In my case, I love invest in projects, but also I love to invest in people. And I see some, in different, industries, different kind of personalities. Some people that is shining a lot, and I invest in these people. I want to like be surround these kind of guys. And you are one of
Oh,
these guys
thank
that are
you.
in my list. Yeah, Kenneth.
I'm
It's a
I'm I'm gonna
pleasure, man.
thank you so much. I'm gonna take that and say it's the lighting. It's the lighting on my bald head doing the reflection. That's the shining that's happening there. But no, I think it's a huge compliment. I really do appreciate it. But I think it is very true. In the startup world, there are lots of people that are not going to champion you and put you forward, and there's lots and lots of hurdles that you go over. But it is not rare, but it's not common that you meet people like yourself who are, saying, "Hey, I like what you do. Let's have a conversation." So no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on the pod, and also for speaking to, yeah, I guess the guys on the accelerator. They're really cool people, really good vibes, just go getters, and I think that's what it is. You want to be surrounded by people who are ambitious, and that ambition happens to, no pun intended, shine through. So yeah, pleasure. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to more things with Quantum Leap Labs.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. Nice. Thank you so much for this hour 20, hour 12 minutes with this introduction and know more about you, Kenneth. It's a pleasure. And yeah, definitely, guys, the audience, please, this recording will be in our socials, in our platforms, and we will do more. This is just the first episode that I want to bring someone that is really good, is really amazing, Kenneth, but we will do more interviews with different VCs, people, experts in legal, tokenomics, founders, and other guys from the industry that I think these kind of conversations will bring a lot of value to the community, for the entrepreneurs and founders community. Yeah, and let's keep in touch. Thank you so much, Kenneth, for your time. See you soon,
Thank
man.
you. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye bye.